Hi everybody, welcome to a quick review of the 2014 Perry Regional Contest. You can see Perry here, located halfway between Columbia, South Carolina and Augusta, Georgia, home of the Masters. You can see the task area here. This is the Atlantic Ocean. The first turn, 15-mile radius around Twin Lakes. Second turn was a 20-mile radius around Allendale. Third, a 15-mile radius around Orangeburg, and then back to the finish. A cold front was approaching from the northwest, which gave the CD and the task advisors a lot of concern. There was a thought in the morning that the task wouldn't happen, and they went for it and launched the field a little bit early, allowing us to get out on task and hopefully arrive back at Perry before the 4:30 predicted arrival of the storms. And it turned out that the weatherman was almost perfectly accurate. There was a little bit of a gust front, and there were also a lot of landouts on this day. I'll go through the results here quickly, but you can see about half of the FAI class had landouts here with no speed points and no distance. You can see that 4 of the 18-meter gliders, John Cochran, Tim Wells, Roger Buchanan, and John Murray, had landouts. The open class made it around, but about half, or perhaps a little bit more than half, of the sports class landed out. And this is not a surprise. There was 15 to 20 knot winds out of the west at altitude, and the high-level and mid-level clouds in the first turn area and lack of sun on the ground in the second leg made it very, very difficult. I'll talk about that more as we go through the task. Getting back down to 18-meter, the winner of the day, Frank Painter, flew impressively, 66 mile per hour average, just a little over optimum. He was followed closely by Doug Jacobs, Jersey, in third. Fourth place, Shaq Roberts in the JS1. Fifth, Sergey, Canadian and former pilot for Team Russia back in his youth. Ken Sorensen, 6th place. 7th, yours truly, Sean Fiddler. 8th, Pete Alexander, a member of the U.S. team. 9th, Rob Ware. And 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th all had landouts today. And understandably so. It was a strong day at first, but got difficult quickly. Okay, so let's begin. I'll speed this up a little bit. Okay, here we go. And I'll zoom in a little bit on the 2D view for you. So worth noting, bravo John Cochran, who had an unfortunate landout today. He had to return. He had a problem with his pitot-static system, and his airspeed wasn't working, so he had to deal with that. And he came back, he landed at the field, you can see him there, and was isolated behind the 18-meter group. So that's worth noting. There wasn't a lot of Stargate roulette here. I think everyone basically was happy to fly their own tasks. There were numerous clouds. You can see the lift values were, I'm not doing a good job here of showing you that, but you can see that the climb rates of 4.2 were pretty common, so it was relatively strong. We were all full of water, so those are wet climb rates. And I'm not really going to zoom in on the start, as there wasn't really a lot of roulette happening this day. So here we go, we're off, we've started. I've got a wider 2D view, and I'm going to slow it down to 20 here. So what's happening at this point is it's dark in the back of this cylinder, and there's sun on the ground now, and the clouds are good, but their clouds are slowly getting weaker the further west that you go. And The sun is not on the ground at all. Probably from this point forward, the Q is still working, and that front is approaching at about 20 miles per hour. There's also a lot of mid-level cloud here that's moving to the west, and that became a problem for me as I moved down into the second turn area. Out on course here, you can see Kilo Mike, Shaq Roberts, and Doug Jacobs in a little pack here working together. Jersey's on his own, basically just going up the north side of the leg axis. Roger Buchanan, this is Sean Fiddler, 7 Tango. Tango Alpha, the task winner for today. W3 Tim Wells. 9-8 is Pete Alexander, who's a member of the U.S. team. So just to give you a flavor for what's happening here. John Murray, Lima X-Ray, and here's Sergey. So that's most of the field. So LDs, high, all well above 50, 70 to 100 range. I basically connect with Pete and work most of my way into the first turn with him. I wasn't aware that Tango Alpha was behind me. Well, he's a little underneath me there. So Frank wins, but he has a little bit of a difficult start. So Kilo Mike and Shaq Roberts and Doug Jacobs have split up a little bit. It looks like Kilo Mike is running down the town of Aiken, looking for lift off the industry there, which is probably a good idea. See, I'm doing 75 to 1 here. I think that's the point that I saw the other glider and move in to work with him. I'm same altitude. And what kind of climb rates are we getting here? 4.7 knots for 1,400 feet, and Pete had 4.8 knots. So a good solid climb. That's essentially my first climb of the task. So I've gone, I don't know, 15 miles or so. And the reason the gliders are varying, as Jersey's made his turn, varying in their course so much is the clouds. There are beautiful clouds underneath the overcast here, but they're thinning out and spreading out. They're not as there's not as much density or activity as there was before. So here I am in about the middle, and just to give you an idea, right here it is dark. It's black on the ground. There's high and mid-level clouds that are completely obscuring the ground from the sun here, but there are a couple really strong looking Q, almost like the base of thunderstorm looking cloud at this point, and we separate because I go to try and get into that cloud and maximize my distance and get right up to cloud base, and Pete Alexander wisely turns around. I think that's the best view right here. So you can see that Ken has turned around, Doug Jacobs and Sergey have turned around early. I think the cloud was even thicker down here, but Foxtrot Charlie went way deep into the churn. Well, not quite as deep as we did, but relatively deep for his side. Tango Alpha is in a climb here, 5.2 knots for 1,600 feet. So the lift is strong, and we're full of water, so there's plenty of lift. 3.7 for 800 feet here. And you can see that Pete turns around. I go a mile or so and turn around. I remember seeing the Concordia coming through and still going at some point here. But boy, have I fallen behind. I'm This is a 15-mile radius, so I'm basically 15 miles now behind the lead group. I've gone maybe a little farther in 3 or 4 miles, so 6 total, but they're way ahead, and the difference is that they're in the sun here. They're right along the edge of it, and that cloud is rapidly moving to the west. And as I get down into this area, there is absolutely no sun on the ground for this full area. And the only sun on the ground is basically right here. So I have to run this whole distance with no sun and get a little low and have a little trouble here. So I probably lost a little bit. And I also don't find any real strong climbs and begin dumping water around Aitken. So you can see Pete. I haven't lost too much on Pete. Here comes John, and I remember seeing John. I knew he had that problem, and I could see him on the farm, and I could see him visually. And I'm at 5,000 feet. He's at 4,000 feet, going into the wind and going into the dark cloud. So that had to be very difficult for him, and I think probably got him a little lower than he would have liked to have been. So 9-8, Pete Alexander, Tango Alpha, Tim Wells, John Cochran still working under that overcast. So right now I'm doing good on Frank. I think I started relatively close to him. I've gone a little deeper into the first turn than he did, and I'm still ahead of him and almost at his same altitude. Tango Alpha is 43. No, he's 1,000 feet above me. So with that altitude and what's coming ahead, he's definitely gained. So there's a miss for me. Down to 3,000. There's no sun on the ground. The clouds are softening, and I'm starting to grow concerned as I know that I need to move around the west side of this airspace, east side of this airspace. So Aitken is a restricted area around a nuclear power plant, which is in this area, and the entire area is restricted. It's a no-no to land in it, and furthermore, if you do land in it, many of the fields are filled with pipes, or sense the groundwater or sense the soil. And Frank Painter gave me an update on this about 20 minutes before we launched. So I planned to go to the back of turn 1, didn't quite make it, and to about 2/3 of the bottom into turn 2, and then come over and time out turn 3 and come back to the finish. You can see I made it to that point here in the first turn and made a considerable deviation into the second turn, and then just touched the third. So we'll look at that as it plays out. But essentially I'm here, there's no sun on the ground, the queue are dying, and I'm starting to think there are landouts ahead for us for those who get too low here. So what do I get? 3.7 knots for 1,600 feet. So I find something. There were clouds around, and it was just a matter of finding the sweet spot. It was a little bit hard to find for me and a number of them. I wasn't finding lift easily. So here we are. We're approaching the eastern run down the Aitken restricted area. I'm with Tim Wells here, and just about at the same altitude. You can see everyone making deviations to finalize their choice of what cloud looks the best. Tim has pulled into not much, 1.1 knots. You see Jersey, you can see Sergey and Doug Jacobs out here getting great climbs. And I saw the sun on the ground there, and I saw that there was absolutely no sun on the ground and a very thick layer of overcast here. And I was really concerned. I actually considered deviating downwind and trying to go around it. But eventually I made the choice to go through it to sun on the ground that was in about this area. Tango Alpha is really cooking. So you can see some of the advantage. A miss there. So I've entered that overcast and kind of in survival mode right now. Even though I'm at 3,600 feet, I'm not comfortable. There's no landing within this area, so I'm limited to fields only underneath me and downwind. Probably still in range of these airports, but those aren't really a consideration from a task perspective. I'm looking at some relatively tree-y terrain down here, and just don't want to get any lower under the overcast. And let me just see what kind of climb rate's happening here. Doug Jacobs is, let me back it up. So Doug Jacobs is finding very solid climbs still. A 4.7 knot climb for 1,500 feet. He's at 5,300 feet. So he made, and Sergey made very wise decisions to turn early, and the benefit of that is that they're out here in the sun. I think all these guys are. Let's see, Jersey's under the overcast here a little bit, but Kilo Mike, Rob Ware, Sergey, and Doug, so here, and here, are all in the sun. We're in overcast here at this position. So you've got Tim Wells, Sean Fiddler, Jerzy Simpliski. And that's Pete Alexander, who's going to work through the restricted area. And then this is John Cochran, who's struggling a little bit. So there I am under the overcast. I'm doing 85 knots, or 85 miles per hour, maybe high 70 knots, and falling through 3,200 feet, and that is 2,800 feet above the ground. I'm taking a climb I can get right now, and there was a queue here on the southern edge of the turn area that I'm trying to work towards, and what do I get? 1.4 knots, so I take it for 6 or 7 turns. And got back up to 3,000. And here it's getting very difficult. Got a ways to go for the sun. It's been dark here for a long time, and I have some concern. Although I do get a 6.9 mile run at 791 LD, so there's something here that I'm working, and I'm sorry I don't remember what it is. Maybe I just got lucky. So there we go, a 2.7 knot climb, and I leave it immediately. Probably not the smartest move in the world. I should be getting out to the sun now, so maybe that's what I was thinking. Is 2.7 knots not enough? I'm going to go out here and find something bigger in the sun. And what do I find? 2.1 knots. So I make a half a dozen turns in that and leave. And at this point I remember I'm in the sun. That didn't work, and there's a queue that is either rekindling or forming over here, and so I sort of made the decision now to deviate from my goal of getting down into the bottom third of the second turn area, and I'm sort of cutting the distance now. And there's also better clouds here. I've been able to reach clouds that haven't been affected by the middle layer clouds that are occurring. And what do I find? Yep, so there it is, 4.4 knots. I finally connect with a reasonable climb, but it's been a long run since up here to get to a decent climb. So I'm up at 3,700 feet, and at this point now I'm working moderately decent looking queue, hoping for a more solid value, and the cloud base is about 6,500 feet or 7,000, and here I am sort of upset because I'm down at 3,500, and I really want to get something strong up to cloud base so I can get my speed back up. But as you can see, I'm having a lot of trouble finding it. Almost looks like I almost made a decision to kind of hedge over to the third turn. Alright, now you can see Tim Wells, who I was with, really struggled. He got low, but he did find a climb, and here he is climbing up in a 3.8 knot climb up to 5,000 feet. So he'll catch up here a little bit, but it took him a while to find that climb for sure. So I've made my turn. I gave up, turning at 3,000 feet. Definitely was frustrated with that. So here I find something, 3.9 knots, and I take that up 2,300 feet. Not bad, but not great for the day. So what I'm faced with at this point is I'm in Q. There's a big blue hole here with more Q, which is probably what Frank Painter and Foxtrot Charlie, Shaq Roberts are going for. But back up here, more importantly, the dark clouds are coming. And I don't know where it is in relation to Perry, but I know it's close, and I know I need to hustle to get back. I sort of know that I'm not going to win the day. I don't think I've had a very good task. I can see gliders. I don't know they're 18-meter gliders, but I can see them coming in above me from deeper in the turn area, and I'm not incredibly excited about what's happened so far. But at this point, I'm thinking the last thing I want to do is land out. I need to get home, which means touch this turn cylinder and get my butt back to Perry. And it turns out that I barely make it from here. So I get a decent climb, and I think this is the last cloud before the blue hole that faced me into the between here and the third turn. And I get up to 5,300 feet. So I'm happy with that. I've got a chance. And here is John Cochran, who caught up quite a bit. He touched the turn here and did this, and now is coming back into the third turn. So he must have been really low here and just struggling trying to find something up in the queue. He's down to 1,500 feet, which is only 1,400 feet above the ground. So he's in a lot of trouble there. So that's interesting. And here I am, the yellow track here. Now, here's how Frank won the day. It looks like he barely touched the second turn. He went almost as deep into the first turn as I did. Barely touched the second turn, so this is a 20-mile radius. That might be 10 miles here, but absolutely maximized the back of the third cylinder and comes back and finishes with me in the same time. So he started behind me. He almost maximizes the first, maybe 2/3 into the first, maximizes the second. He's probably out here in the sun in the certainly better conditions than anything east of or west of there at this point. And Shaq Roberts does the same. And they just spend more time in blue compared to everyone else for the proportion of this task. In proportion to this task. And here's Tim Wells, who fell back a little bit for sure. So there I am. I just touch, and I can see some flashes in front of me. And this is actually a gaggle of 15 and 18-meter gliders, and there were about 15 of them in here. So you can see Foxtrot Charlie, Shaq Roberts, and task winner Frank Painter, Tango Alpha, coming back from very high altitudes, probably 6,000 feet, as they're at 5,500 feet on the way back. We're working into roughly a 20-mile-per-hour west wind, so it's upwind all the way from here and all the way for these guys, for sure. But they're probably within 1,000 feet of final glide from there. So very well played. pull in with Jersey and Doug. Good company for sure. A lot of wind. You can see the blowback on that climb. 2.6 knots for 1,300 feet. And just a look here, Tango Alpha is now probably getting under the influence of the overcast. And he's thermally in nothing. Let me go back a little bit and see if we can pick up a climb right. Nope. So Frank's already struggling. He's down to 4,700 feet, and he's just trying to get to final glide, I would imagine there. So the situation here is dire. It's absolutely overcast. There's absolutely no sun on the ground. There hasn't been sun on the ground for a while, and that overcast extends well back behind us now. So here we are right here. This is Doug and Jersey, and the yellow is 7 Tango Sean Fiddler. There's no sun on the ground, and there's a few wispy cues, which are what we're working towards. And I remember a white cloud underneath a gray overcast off in the distance here, and that's what we go for. And if that didn't work, I think I'm 1,000 to 1,500 feet below final glide here at probably a 2 MC or something. It's getting really close to not making it. So here's Ken Sorensen, and he's found a 2.4 knot climb. So the values are weak. I mean, it's very sparse. There's only 1 or 2 clouds that possibly could work. And Jersey finds us a 2.2 knot average that I take up 873 feet, and that's probably my final glide. Let's see, task winner Tango Alpha is down to 3,900 feet over here. So a 90 ground speed into the wind, so he must have water. Sergey coming in a little bit below. There goes Jersey, there goes Doug, and there goes 7 Tango. So I'm 4,800 feet, should have it from there. Doug Jacobs at 4,700 feet. It's interesting to notice that Jersey left and put 1.5 miles on us by leaving early, and he makes it easily, so good judgment there. And Kilo Mike is low. I talked to him after this task, and he needed something under the overcast with absolutely no cue indications at all, but he was below here, so he should stop for a climb here shortly. So there goes Ken, looking for that last little bit of climb. And he finds 1.3 knots, so you can see it's rapidly getting weaker. Pete Alexander, Tango Alpha, coming roaring in here with the 110 knot average, 110 knot ground speed into the wind. And we're relatively close here. Doug does put the hammer down and pull away from me, and I was nervous that I didn't set my altitude properly, so I left a little bit in the bank and drifted in here. I think I finish 300 feet high or 400 feet high, but so what, I'm happy to make it. And you can, well, you're not going to be able to see, but, well, actually, yeah, let's go back and look at where these landouts happened. So here's a land out. John, here's Tim Wells, here's John Cochran, who I think has already landed out. And who else landed out in our class? Roger Buchanan, but Roger has a sustainer, so he probably made it back to the airport. So let's see, LX is, yeah, he's on the ground already. W3 is at 2,200 feet, and he's facing an almost impossible task now. There's a storm here that has rain showers in it that's bearing down on the airport. total thick overcast and probably occasional rain showers. I think I remember John Murray saying that he landed in the rain or he got poured on shortly after landing. So it was incredibly difficult. Here's the location of the rain shower when we landed, right about here. And there were rumbles of thunder in it and relatively strong winds. There was reports shortly after we landed of 10 knots down sustained for guys in the other classes. And a number of people landed in fields in this area. So it was rough. And interestingly, Rob Ware is fighting on here. He's still in the third turn, about the middle of the third turn, and he gets up to 5,300, and it looks like he makes it back from there. So he must have had the last sliver of sun on the ground. Looks like he almost landed out, had a huge climb, and made it home. So good job. There's John, and Tim Wells is just about to land out. Oh no, Tim has a motor. That's right. So Tim probably turned his motor on. Interesting. So again, Rob Ware, that is impressive. He's probably flying through rain. There's a storm that's essentially over the airport right now at this point, and a lot of gusty winds and a lot of sink. So he's making it work. A 28 to 1 LD for a 28-mile final glide from 5,300 feet, and he barely makes it. There he is. 1,200 is the finish altitude, so he just made it. Good job. All right, and so there's the task. We'll go back to the results here real quick. Again, Frank Painter wins the day with 946 points, 66 mile an hour average. And then Doug, Jacobs, Jersey, Shaq Roberts, Sergey, Ken, myself, Pete, Rob Ware, and then Tim, Roger, John, and John Cochran. So what I wanted to show here was asked to show this, and I think it's a good idea. Using the statistics is a really great way to understand the different flying styles of the pilots. And you can see some basic statistics here. So let's look at 7 Tango. And you have to make sure that you select the task section and not the flight. The flight would include the pre-start and screwing around. This, if you have a task assigned to CU, it will do the statistics for the task itself. And it's not perfectly accurate. Finish altitudes are impossible to create in CU, and often the calculations of the start are a little off and that sort of thing, but it's relative and it's roughly accurate. So you can see that I had 16 thermals. I had an average climb rate of 3.2 knots for the day, which is okay. I had an average ground speed of 82, 16 glides, 11.8 mile average glide between thermals for a 61 LD. And you can compare that to the others. So if you look at Frank Painter, who won the day, you can see that he had a higher average ground speed. He flew faster. He had 14 thermals, a 3.6 knot average climb, so 4/10 higher, a 6-point higher LD, and a longer average glide by over 2 miles, maybe 2.5 miles. Let's look at somebody else. Let's look at, well, for the fun of it, let's look at John Cochran. So John had 11 glides, a 62 LD, so similar to mine. He landed out, so he fell a little short, but his average climb was 3, so a little less than mine. I had 3.2. Let's look at Rob Ware. He had a 50 mean LD, a 10.9 average glide, 2 more thermals, and his average climb was 2.6. So you can sort of see at a high level what the difference is between the pilots. Now this is for the whole task, and you can actually break it down between the legs. And you can see on the first leg, Rob was doing wonderfully. He had a 83 mean LD, 5 glides, a little bit lower average climb rate, I think, than some of us. So let's go back and look at Frank, for example. And Frank on the first leg had a 4.2 average vario. So he won the day, and Rob was, well back at a 47 average to a 65 average. So it essentially summarizes the differences in a different way, and it's great to look at. So I encourage you to take a look at that when you can, if you're not already. So that's it. Trying to think if I forgot anything. I know I wanted to show the statistics a little bit. I'll leave you with the final results, and thank you for watching.